There we go. Yeah, and welcome to the North Central U.S. Climate and Drought Outlook. We've been doing this since 2012 or so, and we're going to continue to do it as far as we can tell. My name is Doug Cluck, and I'm no longer associated with NOAA, but I am affiliated with the National Drought Mitigation Center to some degree at the University of Nebraska. So today, we're going to have Justin Gleason, who is the state climatologist of Iowa, give the presentation. I just want to remind everybody that you can put questions in the question tab there, and we'll get to them. Sometimes we answer them on the fly, and sometimes we'll answer them at the end. But Justin will talk fast enough, and that we'll have time in this hour to go over whatever kind of questions you might have. Anything else I'm forgetting to mention? We don't usually monitor the chat, so put anything you want to add in there in the question, the comments and stuff like that in the question place. So thank you very much, and Justin, why don't you take it away?
All right, thanks, Doug. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, well, thank you again for allowing me to be a presenter this month. I've been doing Mays for the last few years after the tornado outbreak in December, my normal month, so it's good to be with you. I'm from the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, state climatologist of Iowa. And today I will be giving the climate and drought outlook for the Central National Weather Service region. So we show these slides every time, but I just want to reiterate that these presentations are a collaboration from local, state, and federal partners. And our federal partners are extremely beneficial to each state climatologist in our work that we do. And I just want to, on a personal note, reiterate how important Doug and our other colleagues are to the climate services. The next Climate and Drought Outlook will be given on June 19th at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time by Dr. Aaron Wilson, the state climatologist of Ohio. And of course, access to these webinars you can find at these links to the Midwestern Regional Climate Center and the High Plains Regional Climate Center at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Okay, so let's get started. The presentation outline here, looking at recent conditions in terms of temperature and precipitation ranks for April and from January through April 2025. Look at 30-day temperature and precipitation behavior, and then implications on drought. Planting and growing progress as well, looking at our row crops, corn and beans, also wheat and other more specialty type crops, and then impacts and notable events, looking at severe weather and the impacts that we've seen across the region. And then finally, the last part of the presentation are outlooks, looking at ENSO neutral conditions that are currently in place, short-term outlooks, and then looking at the initial June, July, and August outlooks. Okay, so for recent conditions, the first thing we'll look at are our April temperature ranks, and these are for the average temperatures across each state. The darker the red, the warmer the temperatures. The whitish color you see there are near average. So overall, if you look at the central region, near normal across our northern states, the Dakotas all the way over towards Michigan. And then slightly warmer, unseasonably warm temperatures from Iowa south. So we look at from Ohio over to Nebraska and Kansas, warmer than average temperatures in April. Now, if we break these down into the maximum or the daytime high temperatures and the overnight low temperatures, we are seeing similar features here for our daytime high temperatures near average across the upper Midwest, and then getting over central and the eastern Corn Belt, warmer temperatures during the day, also overnight lows. And then we see an expansion of the near average temperatures for those overnight lows getting into the Dakotas over to Montana and down through Colorado. Now, if we look at season to date, so meteorological season to date, beginning March 1st, our temperature departure, this is the average temperature departure. So think of the daytime high plus the overnight low, divide them by 2, gives us a good temperature baseline to compare events. Across the Midwest, we're anywhere from 2 to 5 degrees above average. So definitely warmer for this spring. Coupled with this warmness, we've also seen particularly windy conditions in March and April, some of the windiest starts to spring for many states in our region. We shift over into the plains, warmer conditions, anywhere from 2 to 6 degrees above average. And if you look at the Dakotas with temperature behavior just since the start of May, very anomalously high departures in terms of the heat potential that we have seen just to begin March or May. So if we flip to precipitation rankings, again, the greener the green, the wetter the month for the state. That number in the middle is the rank, and the ranking goes back to 1895. Some of our states have longer records. Here in Iowa, we have 153 years of records. So sometimes our rankings do vary. But if you look at the wetter conditions across the region, Missouri had the 4th wettest April on record. Southern Illinois, Indiana, getting into Indiana, the 8th wettest, and even over into Ohio. So the southern and eastern extent of our region have been the wettest. Then you see wetter conditions across the Dakotas swinging over into Wisconsin. And then where you see those white colors for Michigan, Iowa, Montana, and Wyoming, near average temperatures. So kind of a spread from wetter conditions to near normal, and then definitely drier as you get to the West Coast. If we break this down by counties in each state, you can really see where the storm track has been locked in through April, particularly across southern Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and into Kentucky. So you see these two bipoles here, very wet conditions, and then you get over into Nebraska and Colorado, drier conditions. Again, the deeper the brown or the greener the green, that's where we see the wet and dry extremes. And then you have little pockets here and there of drier and wetter conditions. But overall, where you see those white counties, near normal precipitation for April. If we now look at January through April, where we stand for 2025, we do see broad scale warmth across much of the United States. Only from Kansas up through North Dakota and over into Montana do we see near normal temperatures. But this has been, you go back 12, 24, 36, 48, 60 months, some of the warmest stretches of temperatures that we've seen. So near normal west and then slightly warmer towards our east. Now, if we look at our precipitation rankings through April, wetter conditions, definitely Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana, fifth wettest start, and then Kentucky, 5th wettest start, and then Missouri. On the flip side, we have Nebraska and Colorado, 9th and 13th driest starts on record since 1895. And then where we see the white coloring again, near normal, but trending closer to drier for many of the states that are in that near normal category. Now, if we break this down again by county, you can see where the wettest behavior has been. Northeastern Iowa, getting up into the UP of Michigan and Wisconsin, even in parts of Montana, and then very wet conditions with devastating flooding in Kentucky and parts of northeastern Arkansas. But this really shows you where the storm track has been locked. And then a very dry portion of northern Illinois, getting into southern Iowa, and then definitely looking at Nebraska. And here's those bullseyes. Okay, so flipping to current or recent behavior, this is the last 30-day temperature departure from normal temperature. When we say normal temperature, that's the 30-year climatology, 1991 to 2020, 30-year average here. what we're seeing is definitely a bullseye of much above average temperatures, anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees above average. Then you flip to the eastern corn belt, uh, still warmer or near average, but cooler than portions of the upper Midwest. Basically a dividing line across Iowa here from cooler conditions southeast and then much above average northwest. Now, if we look at precipitation, this is the percent of normal precipitation from this time last year. We were seeing broad scale severe weather, also with that severe weather, of course, the thunderstorms that produce it, very wet conditions across much of the central region. Did a good job of finally busting the 4-year drought that we were seeing here in Iowa. We flip to the last 30 days, a different story altogether. Very dry conditions. You look at anywhere from 25 to 50% of normal across Nebraska, getting into northwestern Iowa, stretching into western Minnesota, and even portions of the Dakotas. The only wet pockets we generally see are southwestern Missouri into Illinois and then over into Ohio, and then that northeastern portion of Iowa getting into Wisconsin. So I think this broad scale story here is where it's been dry. We are missing out on regular rainfalls, particularly in May, when we are getting into the wettest time of the year. And this is where we do see a drought intensification and expansion, and I'll show those slides in a few minutes. Now, if we look at soil moisture, this is a NASA remote sensed soil moisture product going down to 80 inches. Again, this was this time last year. So wherever you see that gray color near normal in the 30 to 70th percentile, how these are computed, we take 100 years of information and then look at the percentile breakdown. So for example, if you're looking at that very 98th percentile, in the top 2 wettest years in that soil profile for where we are currently. Now, if we flip to this year, we are seeing drier conditions in those soil profiles. Particularly, you look at northern Illinois, stretching into Michigan, and then the Dakotas down into Nebraska and Kansas. That's where we're seeing drying soils. Now, luckily, across Nebraska and South Dakota, we are seeing some precipitation over the next few days, and that 7-day QPF, if it verifies, and we'll get to that towards the end, will do some help in terms of infiltrating soil moisture, particularly as vegetative demand increases. But overall, if you're looking at the broad scale top line story here, where it's been dry, we're seeing an exacerbation of those drier conditions given a lack of precipitation, but also the warmer temperatures that we've seen across the region. Now, if you watch the news at night and you look at the weather forecast, we have atmospheric models, of course, that tell us what the temperature should be, what kind of precipitation we're going to get over the next 7 days. We also have land surface models that can look at the soil hydrology and what we see as a modeled behavior. So if you look at the top left map here, this is again, the percentile ranking. So the darker the reds, the drier the conditions in that soil profile. You look at that 10th percentile bullseye in northern Illinois, and then stretching over into Nebraska and portions of North Dakota into Montana, the driest, let's say, five years period for this time of year for the data that we have. And then if you transition south into southern Missouri, stretching into Indiana and Ohio, wetter conditions, 99th percentile. Soil profiles are basically saturated. Now, if you look at the bottom right-hand map here, this is the anomaly plot or the delta plot, so the change in the amount of moisture in the soil profiles from the end of April. We do see broad scale across the region, negative percentiles. So we're lack of precipitation, lack of soil moisture infiltration, and that's where we see drier conditions setting in and drought conditions expanding. Looking at USDA metrics here, topsoil, and these are issued every Monday with the crop progress report. This is topsoil moisture, percent short to very short on the left. And just to orient you here, that top number is the percent, and that bottom number is the change from last week. So if we look at Nebraska, for example, 76% of the state has short or very short topsoil moisture, and that's an increase of 11% from the previous week. So the darker the brown, that's where we've seen drier conditions continue. Only portions, again, from Missouri through Ohio do we see better numbers in terms of short to very short. If we look at the percent adequate on the right-hand side here, we have a lot of upper Midwest states in the region that have negative numbers in those brackets. So we have lost topsoil moisture in that adequate classification over the last week. Now, if we look at subsoil moisture, again, similar story. Where we're dry, we remain dry, and the first half of May has been a particularly dry month for much of our upper Midwest states. So we have seen subsoil moisture decrease. And this is of particular note, again, as we move into the warmest time of the year, but also as vegetative demand increases. That's where we can start to see a rapid intensification of drought conditions as subsoil and topsoil moisture is extracted via vegetative demand or atmospheric demand from warmer temperatures. So looking at the drought monitor map that was released this morning for the central region, you can see across the eastern corn belt and the eastern states in our region, generally free of drought and abnormal dryness. You have to start moving into Indiana and Illinois to see that abnormally dry D0 category. Again, not technically drought, but more of a reflection of 30 to 60-day dryness. And then we do see pockets of moderate drought east of the Missouri. Then you start to see the drought conditions really intensify, particularly Nebraska and getting into Kansas, South Dakota, even North Dakota, where we see that D2 and D3 severe to extreme drought. Now, if we were to flip to this time last year, broad scale improvement or broad scale lack of drought across the region. In fact, you look at only 2 pockets of D2 drought, basically in northeastern Iowa, which is now one of the wettest parts of the state, and also getting down into Kansas with even a little pocket of D3. So with the very active severe weather season that we had last year with all of the thunderstorms, the 9th wettest start, in fact, for Iowa through June, we were able to hold off and even bust drought conditions across the region. Now, if we look at a 4-week class change map to orient you here, the darker the greens, the higher the category of improvement in drought conditions. And on the flip side, the darker the warmer colors, that's a 1, 2, 3 class degradation. So we have seen improvement over the last month in drought conditions where you see green, but we've also seen intensification, particularly northwestern Iowa, getting into pockets of Nebraska, western part of Colorado, and getting into Montana as well. So this is 4 weeks. If we go back 6 months, getting into November, which was a particularly wet month for states in the upper Midwest, we have seen broad scale improvement. Now, if you go back a full year, you'll see broad scale degradation. So it just depends on the time scale that you use here. But over the last 6 months, we have seen much improved conditions, even looking at the eastern extent, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. So this is where we sit at 6 months, and then you move over into the western states, southwestern states in our region. That's where you see degradation. Okay, now we're going to move to growing season progress, and I thank my colleagues across the region for sending pictures to me. Pictures are sometimes difficult to come by, but Bridget Mason from the Wisconsin Climate Office, the Assistant State Climatologist, wins the Contribution Award this month. Okay, so first of all, we'll look at the corn progress as issued by USDA NASS through the Crop Progress Report. To orient you on this image, the top number again is the corn planted on the left, percent planted, and that bottom number in the bracket is a change from the 5-year average. So wherever you see green colors across this map, that's where we've seen ahead of the 5-year average for corn planted. You look at Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, that's where we've seen behind the average in terms of getting planted. On the corn emergence, again, same idea, and generally where you see a behind the average on planted, that's where we're behind in terms of percent emerged as well. So our central to western Corn Belt states are doing well. Our eastern Corn Belt states are slightly behind the average. Soybeans, generally across the board, percent planted were above or far ahead of the 5-year average. I'm looking at you, South Dakota, in terms of 28% ahead of the 5-year average. Only Michigan and Kentucky are we slightly behind 1%. Percent emerged, again, only Michigan are we seeing a slight dip in soybeans emerged, but overall across the region, we're seeing a good emergence and ahead of that 5-year average. Now looking at spring wheat on the top left, oats on the top right, and then sugar beets, all generally ahead, save for oats across of Michigan, or Wisconsin, sorry. So good progress here. This again ties in with the lack of precipitation that we've seen across the upper Midwest. It allows for faster field work, faster planting, and that's what we're seeing reflected on these maps. Okay, so now we're going to shift to hydrological, snowfall, snow water equivalent, lake levels, all that good stuff in the next set of slides. This picture was taken in Des Moines. These are crepuscular rays that are formed from the sun shining through thunderstorm towers. So this was from a dear friend of mine, and I think it's one of the best I've seen. Okay, so first of all, we'll look at the snow water equivalent across the western extent of the region. And when we're looking at this, the snow water equivalent, this is the equivalent liquid amount that you would get from melted snowpack. And overall, the snow water equivalent percentages range from the mid-30s to the upper 80s to the northeast. Snow water equivalent is below 70% northwest. You look at the recent warmer temperatures that we've had, it's led to a loss of anywhere from 20 to 30% of the snowpack in Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. We did see an uptick in late season snowpack from a snowstorm recently, but overall trending below average on that snow water equivalent from the existing snowpack. Now, if we look at the total snow water equivalent in inches for above Fort Peck and from Fort Peck to Garrison, and I'll orient you on these images here. This is the inches of water equivalent here. The red line is the 1991 to 2020 average. The blue line here is the maximum snow water equivalent that we've seen on record. And then the the green line here is the minimum. So where you see that green shading, that's where we stand in the 2024 to 2025 season. So as of May 11th, the reach above Fort Peck has 14.7 inches of snow water equivalent, and 92% of the annual peak remains. And as a reminder, the normal peak is April 17th. The reach between Fort Peck and Garrison is at 13.9 inches of snow water equivalent, and 95% of peak remaining, and peak was reached on April 5th. So if you're tracing the shading line, it's falling generally below the 30-year average, but it is, near the average. And this has implications on, again, runoff into our reservoirs and into our streams and river systems, as well as implications on irrigation. So if we look at the Missouri River system storage, this is as of May 13th. System storage is at 50.4 million acre feet, below the 1967 to 2024 average. And that average line is these blue stacked lines as they go up and down. 2025 is this red line, and here this dotted gray line is the forecast. Now we're running below 2024 as well, which was again a wet wetter year for the reaches here. If we look at the Gavin's Point release, it's currently at 26,500 cubic feet per second, and it will be adjusted as needed to meet downstream navigational targets. And also our reservoir levels are slightly less than average as we sit right now. Okay, another proxy we look at our 20-day US 28-day average stream flow at our U.S. Geological Survey stream gauges across the United States. So if you look at our above, and again, this is percentile ranking. So looking at our above normal, generally you look at Ohio, southern Illinois, and southern Missouri, and then portions of northwest into western Wisconsin and southeastern Minnesota. That's where we see above average stream flows. So you look across the upper Midwest, generally where you see that main color you see is green, so near normal within that 25th to 75th percentile. Where we do get into problems are Minnesota, Illinois, and northwest Missouri, where we see those orange colors, which are in the 10 to 24 or below normal percentiles. But really the bullseye here is much below in southern Nebraska and getting into Kansas. And this is a similar situation that we've seen last year and even the year before, just very low stream flows from lack of precipitation and lack of runoff. Now, if we look at significant wildfire potential for May, the outlook, we only really saw above normal potential in western Minnesota and the northern parts of Iowa. We haven't had any widespread field fires here in Iowa, but we have seen broad scale, pretty disastrous fires form up in the northeastern part of Minnesota. And I'll show a slide from a radar loop in a few slides. If we look at June, we aren't seeing really any significant wildfire potential right now for the region, save for the southwestern portion of Colorado. Now, if we look at Great Lakes ice and temperature, of course, all the ice is out on the Great Lakes, but if we look at the 2025 season, Great Lakes ice coverage was near average for the season. And if we're looking at lake temperatures as of now, they are also tracking with the mean, or where they should be for this time of year. Now, if we look at the Great Lakes water levels, below the May long-term average for Lakes Michigan, Huron, and Superior. And then looking at Lake Erie, about 5 inches above May's long-term average. And then looking at the plots here, for the next month or by next month, Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron are forecasted to rise slightly, and we see the uptick here. Lakes Erie and Ontario are expected to remain near their current levels, so we really don't see a rise in the Lake Erie water levels on this plot. Okay, shifting over to impacts and notable events across our region, seeing this picture from Bridget with the epic hail that they saw in Wisconsin. Hail and high winds have really been a story across this severe weather season for much of the region. If we look at severe weather reports so far, over 3,000 severe weather reports in April, and that's 737 more than last April. And last April was a record severe weather season for many states in the region, of course, Iowa as well. And then you look at several rounds of severe weather, severe wind and tornadoes across the eastern part of our region as well. And this is the plot for April. This is the plots for this severe weather season showing the widespread tornado outbreaks that we've seen across the southern states, but also getting into Missouri and Illinois and even a few supercell and tornadoes across southwestern Iowa. If you look at widespread events, basically the 17th through the 19th from Nebraska through Ohio. The 20th, Missouri and Illinois, 40 tornadoes reported. The 27th through the 28th, again, broad scale, Nebraska through Wisconsin. This is where we had that moderate risk across northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. All the ingredients were there at day 7 on the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook for a widespread severe weather outbreak, including significant tornadoes. Much of the state of Iowa was capped, meaning there was a warm air layer aloft that didn't allow for updrafts to form. And luckily, we didn't see any tornadoes from that particular event. So a tornado bust here in Iowa. 29th and 30th, again from Missouri through Ohio, 21 reports of tornadoes, 18 in Missouri, 3 in Illinois. First, second in Ohio, wind and hail event, and then the 13th and 14th. So we've had an active severe weather season, particularly in the southern and eastern portion of the central region. Now, here are some of the headlines that we've seen, and we've had some hail damage from the storms in Wisconsin. We are also looking at climate scientists predicting above average hurricane seasons in 2025, and I have a slide for that. A lot of these headlines are planting and field work, making progress given the drier conditions that we've seen across the region along with warmer temperatures, but also the amount of severe weather that we've had. Storms hit Pennsylvania and Ohio, tornadoes and hail across Wisconsin and Missouri. So we've had definitely an active season as we get into spring, but we always experience active seasons given the mesoscale nature of spring. Okay, so these are individual state impacts, and of course, I'm not going to read these verbatim, but the radar loop on the left-hand side here is from the Minnesota Climate Office. Thanks to Pete Boulay for sending me the link for this. This is showing the plumes on radar from the fires in northeastern Minnesota. So with looking at Minnesota with 10 straight days of zero precipitation and temperatures running 10 to 20 degrees above normal, of course you get fire danger. And what's been kind of interesting is how low the dew points have been. Very dry air in concert with this omega block that's basically dictating the weather patterns over the central part of the United States, and hence the warmer conditions that we've seen. Looking at Missouri, Missouri had the 4th wettest April on record, despite very dry conditions across the northern part of the state. Longstanding rainfall records were broken in St. Louis and eastern Missouri, and in Springfield and southwestern. And then again, I mentioned the tornadoes. 80 reported tornadoes right now statewide through 2025, which already ranks the year as the 5th most active in terms of annual tornadoes since the Great Flood year of 1993. Illinois, tale of 2 states, wet south, dry north. Most of the southern half of Illinois had anywhere from the top 5 wettest Aprils on record. Impacts, of course, delayed planting, delayed field work. You look at the northern part of the state, lots of open windows for good weather. And when you have good weather, you have fast and rapid planting progress. Illinois was second in the nation in terms of tornado reports in April, 47, and is currently second in the nation for tornado reports at 85. Okay. Now looking at Wisconsin, April 2025 averaged 0.2 of a degree below normal and 0.3 of an inch, 3/100th of an inch below normal, which made it a normal April. We don't really see normal anymore across our states. It's either too dry or too wet, too warm or too cold. But it's nice to see, as a climatologist, our middle name is average. So when you do have an average month, that makes your work life a little less hectic. Wisconsin saw 43 severe weather warnings, whereas the 1986 to 2024 April average is 21. I showed you that baseball size hail picture that Bridget sent me. Also between May 12th and 13th, very high to extreme fire danger across central and northern portions of Wisconsin. Also, what we've heard across the region, and I've mentioned this, some of the windiest conditions that we've seen in March and in April in terms of wind speeds, general wind speeds, but also wind gusts. And that's partly because of a storm track further south, a storm track further north, a pretty intense pressure gradient in between, and that's where you get those very windy conditions setting in. Looking at Colorado, from Russ Schumacher, the state climatologist there, mentioned there was a water emergency in Manitou Springs, which is west of Colorado Springs, resulted from a big snow at Pikes Peak last week, followed by a very warm stretch, which led to rapid melting. And this inundated the treatment facilities, and hence a water emergency was issued. So that's an interesting thing to see there. Very high amounts of snow and then rapid melting can lead you into pretty good problems. Okay, so the final part of the presentation here are climate outlooks. I mentioned we are in ENSO neutral conditions, which is in between El Niño and La Niña, so near normal sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. The atmosphere decouples, so we really don't see any driving factors from neutral conditions. We'll look at the next 7-day precipitation forecast. As I mentioned, if it verifies, this could be very good news for drier parts of our region. The short-term outlook getting into the end of May, the initial June outlooks, and then the September or the June, July, August temperature and precipitation outlooks for meteorological summer. So La Niña conditions faded in March, meaning that those colder sea surface temperatures. The SSTs, or the sea surface temperatures, were trending slightly warmer, and then we had a slight dip back down into cooler territory, but still within the realm of ENSO neutral conditions. So looking at the forecast from the Climate Prediction Center, neutral is favored through the Northern Hemisphere summer, 74% chance of it persisting through the June through August time period, and then chances exceeding 50% of it persisting through early fall of 2025. So if we look at the probabilistic guidance that the Climate Prediction Center issues on a monthly basis, we're currently sitting here, and to orient you here, La Niña is the blue bar, neutral conditions, the gray bar, El Niño, the red bar. You can see very low probabilities, almost below 10% through winter time of El Niño conditions. Where we start to see an increase in the potential for La Niña rebounding is in that October, November, December, but again, still slightly edged out by the ENSO neutral conditions. Okay, so the short-term forecast, what we call the quantitative precipitation forecast, or what we expect from the forecast models as an accumulation of moisture from precipitation over the next 7 days, where you see those, the boundary between that light blue to magenta, that's the 1.25 to 1.5 inch potential. So broadly across the region, particularly across the Dakotas, and then swinging down into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, the potential for 2+ inches of rainfall over the next 7 days. Now this is day 5 and 6. So when you see these potential, especially in the convective part or the thunderstorm driven portion of spring and summer, the farther out you see these, so day 4, 5, 6, take those with a grain of salt. This is not going to be widespread rainfall, but it's looking like we're going to see broad scale beneficial rains across the region if the forecast does verify. Now, if we look at the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlooks for day 1, which is the current day here, we have an enhanced, which is on a scale of 3 to 5, risk of severe weather from Minneapolis swinging down to Fort Wayne, including La Crosse, Milwaukee, and Chicago. So a broad scale severe weather event is possible. And then we switch to day 2, which is tomorrow, a moderate risk, basically from just south central Missouri over to Louisville in Kentucky, but a very potent system here. So this is partly what we're going to see, the enhanced amount of rainfall, and then a wetter potential early next week as well. But if you're in the moderate enhanced risk here, please stay weather aware, have your weather radio, your weather apps ready, and be cognizant of conditions because they can change rapidly. If we look at the 8 to 14 day outlooks, and this is valid May 22nd through the 28th, and again, these are issued every day about 2:30 or generally after 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. What we're seeing, temperature on the left, precipitation on the right, and again, these are probabilistic, so they're not telling us how much above or below a temperature will be. They're just telling us a probability of being above or below average. So where you see that blue bullseye across Indiana and Ohio, that's where we see the highest probabilities of cooler than average temperatures, but this is stretching across the central region, and then you start to see that gradient form as ridging builds in across the west coast. On the precipitation side, generally near normal conditions across much of the region, and then you get into Minnesota, western Iowa, and the Dakotas. That's where we see a slight lean towards drier condition, and again, this is a function of the ridging that's building in on the west coast. You look at the 3 to 7 day hazards from the Weather Prediction Center, again, matching well with that 7-day precipitation forecast. Where you see those green polygons, that's where we're seeing the potential for heavy rain, and that's again where we're going to see the highest potential for those 2+ inch rainfalls, and then some chances of severe weather across Kansas. Initial June outlooks, hot off the press this morning. Again, temperature on the left, precipitation on the right. We are getting a clear signal in terms of the potential for warmer temperatures across the region and across the United States. On the precipitation side, leaning wetter in the eastern Corn Belt, near normal, equal chances for the central portion of our region, and then leaning below average in terms of probabilities for precipitation in our western states. Now, if we look at the June, July, August outlooks, and again, we still have that spring barrier, which is the transition from synoptic scale or larger scale low pressure systems to thunderstorm-driven rainfalls during the growing season. Initial outlooks are showing broad-scale warmth potential across the United States, with the cooler conditions or the lower probabilities being across the much of our region. Now, if you look at the precipitation behavior, however, we are seeing a slight lean from Iowa and then getting into higher probabilities of drier conditions across the high plains, sweeping over into the Pacific Northwest. Only portions of eastern Iowa eastern Ohio are we really seeing a slight lean towards the wetter conditions. The warmer signal along with this drier signal in concert with those longer term deficits going out 3, 4, 5 years, portions of Iowa, Nebraska, the drier portions of our region over the last 3 to 5 years have missed out on at least 1 year's worth of rainfall. So you have longer term hydrological impacts as well. You couple these with warmer and drier chances, that's where we could see drought conditions expand and intensify if we do see warm and drier conditions. If we look at the seasonal drought outlook, kind of mirroring what we see in the June, July, August outlooks, these are valid through August 31st. Wherever you see the yellowish color, that's where we see drought development likely. And then the brown color, that's existing drought conditions, D1 or above. That's where we see those D1 drought conditions persisting. And again, this goes hand in hand with the warm and dry signal that we're seeing for the western part of our region. So for those of us that give a recommendation or coordinate the recommendation for our given states to the U.S. Drought Monitor each week, please send your COCORAS information in. Please send us through the Seymour reporting system or even directly email or call us. The conditions that you're seeing on the ground in your farms and your production, this allows us to produce a better drought map given that federal and state programs rely on that categorization. So we really need your input to produce the best map for our farmers and producers. You look at the eastern extent of our region, not looking like drought is going to evolve. But if we do get into a warm and dry pattern, we could see the shorter-term monthly deficits that we have in the Eastern Corn Belt help exacerbate drought conditions, or at least abnormal dryness. Finally, looking at the 2025 hurricane season, we are looking at, you look at the middle column here, the average amount of storms in the basin. Given the warmer waters in the Atlantic basin, we are seeing a prediction of a more active Atlantic season. So you generally see a more active Atlantic season in La Niña years, but with the warm waters that we're seeing in the Atlantic, higher potential for more hurricanes. Why this is important, depending on where the Bermuda high is, depending on where these storms make landfall, this could block off the Gulf moisture gate into the upper Midwest, wetter conditions across the mid-Atlantic states and the Eastern Corn Belt potentially, and then drier conditions across the upper Midwest. So these are the other things that we look at in terms of drought potential. So finally, the summary here. Short-term outlooks through the end of the month show higher probabilities of cooler temperatures across much of the central region. A shift from a more active storm track, which increases our rainfall potential over the next 7 days and even through the end of May. Seasonal temperature outlooks show a leaning signal for above normal temperatures with the highest probabilities farther west in our region. Seasonal precipitation outlooks are also leaning dry for Iowa and Minnesota west, with the highest chances of unseasonable dryness across the Dakotas getting into Nebraska and through Montana. Drought conditions look to persist and degrade across the western states where drought conditions are currently present. Even that abnormally dry category can be downgraded into D1 after several weeks of below average precipitation. Finally, neutral conditions are present and will likely persist into the fall months. Okay, so here's further information from our partners, the Midwestern Regional Climate Hub, the High Plains Climate Hub, Climate Center, I should say, and then all of the other sources of information that we compile to give these monthly presentations. Here are our contact information if you should have any email questions after we get off the webinar, or give us a call. And with that, Doug, I'll let you steer.
Okay, thank you. Great presentation, Justin. Justin had too much to cover, as you can tell, and not enough time. So we're going to jump right into the questions and maybe even do a little ad-libbing when it comes to some of the other points. So one of the first questions that we got was concerning a diversion, irrigation diversion up in the Milk River system, way up in northern Montana. It had some issues last year. I believe I think it flooded out or broke out. And if anybody on this, anybody on the call has any other information they want to type in to the question area and say how it's going or when it's going to be fixed, we would appreciate that information. I don't know a timeline. I would have to, maybe it's Bureau of Reclamation would have an idea on when that irrigation thing is going to get fixed, either this year or next year, and if it's being funded. Okay. Oh, great. People are St. Mary's diversion. There we go. Thank you, Jessica. June is when it's supposed to be up and running for St. Mary's. There you go. Woo! Oh, and now somebody's saying completed by the fall. So maybe those are two different things. I don't know, but the sooner the better. Obviously, the fall won't help the folks who are trying to irrigate this year. Moving on, we talked a little bit about wildfires here, and yeah, okay. Thank you, everybody, for those comments on the St. Mary's diversion. It's great to have such a diverse group on here. Yeah, so a couple questions were, what do the smoke impacts look like this year for us across the U.S., especially smoke coming out of Canada, which we had over the last few years. There are big fires in Manitoba that obviously we didn't really talk too much about here. We did talk about Minnesota fires and such, and that's a little unusual for that for that area for this time of year as well, although things haven't greened up there a lot. So I suppose burning is a potential. Um, Normally, our fire season in the U.S. is sort of late June or July through September, more or less, and that's when we get them. But the Canada, I don't have a climatology on, so if anybody wants to comment about that, feel free, or anybody on this call, um, or either Justin or Dennis. Um, Yeah, and then a couple comments about high winds yesterday in Kansas, creating a dust storm, temporarily closed I-70. It seems to be happening. I don't want to say frequently, but it's already happened a couple times this year already. I didn't know about the one last night. It doesn't surprise me at all because the winds did pick up quite a bit, and crops aren't really up very far, if at all, in a lot of places. So we have a lot of exposed dirt. And so, anything you want to say about that, Justin?
No, we've had several of these low pressure systems that are producing the severe weather that we're seeing across the upper Midwest that are really, they can pick up a lot of this dirt. They're picking up dirt from the desert Southwest and transporting it up. So we've had a lot of dirty rains,
Yeah,
but also the cultivation and just how windy March and April have been.
right.
It's definitely the ideal conditions for these things to happen.
In March and April already are relatively windy, so this was more extreme, I guess you'd say, than normal. If you look at something called visible satellite online, and that's kind of a technical term, I guess, but there are ways to look at plumes of of dust blowing around. This morning, a plume came across from Kansas, actually, across Kansas City, where I am, and I went out, of course, and ran in it, and I noticed it pretty quickly. It looked like haze, but haze in the sky. Maybe it was humidity, but no, it was dry air, and it was definitely dust. So I could tell when I was running. Um, Construction's ahead of schedule. St. Mary's Division. Okay. Lots of fire activity in Canada has begun. We're experiencing another. Oh, thank you, Trevor. Experiencing another active fire season, especially in British Columbia. Okay, so oftentimes the further west in Canada it happens, the better chance, not always, but the better chance it has of reaching the U.S. But it really depends on which way the wind is blowing, right? So if we get north, obviously northerly winds of any sort, that we can get a lot of that. And so, yeah, someone's putting a link in there if you want to go look at the satellite page to look at. And it's sometimes it's hard to see smoke and dust compared to clouds. Clouds are pretty obvious. Smoke and dust, you gotta take a minute and kind of look at a hazy area moving around. It looks a little bit different. Pretty cool. Um, Okay, so fires. El Nino. Let's talk about El Nino, La Nina just for a minute, Justin. As you said, the models are uh, showing us not really going anywhere from neutral through the end of the year. The only thing I'll say is we'll caution any kind of assumption there with El Nino and La Nina because and neutral. This is the time of year where we have no clue, and it's called the spring barrier. And usually April, May, for sure April, May, sometimes June. The ocean really doesn't give up enough evidence for us to make a decent prediction in terms of um, which way it's going to go, either being cool, near normal, or above normal. So above normal temperatures is El Nino, below normal temperatures is La Nina. So I'll just caution that. I'd say hold on till June or even July to make any kind of strong assumptions about what's going to happen with El Nino, La Nina. And that's important because that helps us make forecasts, especially in the cool season.
Right. And just to reiterate, there's a low correlation between the phase of El Nino, La Nina, or neutral and summertime behavior.
True. Good point. Severe weather, Justin did a good job of pointing out there has been a lot of it. It is spring. It should be happening. That's not a surprise. maybe the extent and some of the early season stuff always is a little bit surprising when it gets started early. This is also spring, so thus rains happen. So maybe back up to that QPF because that's kind of it's called quantitative precipitation forecast. And really what it means is what are the models more or less saying in terms of how much rain could we get over the next 7 days? So an accumulation of 7 days. This is very impressive, especially if you live in western North Dakota. That doesn't happen very often, where you get over, I guess it's over 4 inches in some spots, 4 to 5 inches, according to the model. So that's impressive. As you go sort of south and east, it's still impressive, but it's not as odd as it is up there. But this is the time of year where heavy rainfall does occur and should more or less occur more often than it does in other times of year. So now through middle of June until the end of June, this is our rainy season. If we don't get it now, we're in big trouble. Anything you want to say about that, Justin?
I agree.
Okay. All right. I think we have 3 minutes left. So let's see. Anything else? Nope. Nothing else came through. I want to thank you all everybody who hung in there.
Hey,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, Doug, I'm curious if anyone's on, if this is too late to help with the rangeland conditions out in the plains, or if we're still early enough to help that out.
Yeah. Obviously, we know, Dennis, we know it'll help fill some potholes and things like that for cattle and all that. But it's a good question in terms of plants that need, especially cool season rain or cool season plants that need the moisture now or before now to really help out. It's kind of getting to the end of the cool season stage. And if you don't want to comment, don't. So I'm not seeing any comments on that. I'm guessing that any rain is good rain for the most part, but it's going to be more and more. How much it helps is going to be more limited as we go into the heat of the summer. All right.
Yeah, I agree. I just wasn't sure if there was anybody online who could comment quickly or not, but that's okay. We're running out of time here.
Yep. There's always Brad Rippey. We can always pick on him, but of course, I won't pick on Brad. Oh, is Brad gone? It looks like, he's still here. All right. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back next month. Same bat channel, same bat time. Third Thursday of June, where Aaron Wilson, the state climatologist from Ohio, will be speaking. Thanks, everyone, and have a great month. Bye-bye.